Hola, it's Joe Partavilla, and you are listening to the Forbes Books Podcast, and I am an unabashed lover of film. I love Marvel movies, I love French New Wave subtitled films, I love documentaries. And there's nothing I love more to do than to read up about the folks that have shaped the entertainment industry. If you were to ask me, name 3 companies that disrupted the industry like no one else. Well, it's easy. Netflix, Redbox, and MoviePass. But what if I told you my guest this week worked at all 3 of those companies and wrote a book all about it? His name is Mitch Lowe, and the title of his new book is Watch and Learn How I Turned Hollywood Upside Down with Netflix, Redbox, and MoviePass. Mitch, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, Mitch, I full disclosure, I just built a new home and in a neighborhood where, for some reason, there was no internet. So for the first 2 months of living in our house, we have been basically mainlining Redbox DVDs because we've had no other way to watch any kind of entertainment. So, that probably could have been the trick for Redbox. Just make sure that there's no internet anywhere. But thank you for all your work you did with Redbox, because me and my wife would have been screwed without it.
Well, we used to, we would pray for rain and pray for the cable to go out, but the electricity to stay on. That was the nirvana of the best days ever at Redbox.
Well, I mean, you have such an impressive resume, Mitch, Netflix, Redbox, and MoviePass. So let's talk about some current events, because recently, Out of the Dead rises MoviePass. So my question to you is, does that type of subscription movie service that's not affiliated with an AMC or a Regal, does that have a chance to survive in this new ecosystem?
It does. I'm not aware of exactly what their business model is. It's clearly different from what ours was. Any business that reinvigorates what is a, you could say dying or definitely declining business has the opportunity to make money. Because, this whole concept of reinvigorating transactions and then monetizing those users is a model that many businesses use. I mean, look at Amazon. It started a business on books, but now it, provides almost everything you want in life. So, a business like that does have the possibility, but I don't know enough about what they're doing to be able to really give a good opinion.
Yeah, I mean, my thing with the MoviePass is, back in the day, it was flourishing because it was when there were 5 or 6 new movies out every weekend, and studios were putting out 20, 30 movies a piece every year, and so now you don't see that. So I just wonder if there's just an urge for the consumer to need something like that when there aren't that many movie offerings at the theater.
That's absolutely true. The great growth of MoviePass coincided with some fantastic movies coming out. The Avengers and I mean there was so many the Tom Cruise films and stuff, and a lot of good independents like I, Tonya. I think the problem in that industry is that it continues to be totally beholden to the studios. Mm-hmm. And so when the studios are making a lot of good films, the theaters go up. When they're not, it goes down. And they haven't, theaters as a business has not, created some independence that's not totally reliant on, the big 6 studios to provide product. It's almost in a way like if you were a company that sold consumer products and Walmart was 90% of your business and decided not to buy your product next year. And that's, I think, what the cinemas have done to themselves.
And with one of your former companies, Netflix, they've become basically the independent movie studio, where the independent films that used to come out in New York and LA and they get platformed out, and if they were hits, they would be shown nationally. That would be how independent movies would take off. But now they're going to a Netflix and an Amazon for that. So the days of independent cinema and of Harvey Weinstein and Miramax, those are long gone. Mm-hmm. So where do you see independent cinema in that sort of framework when you talk about the studios, but like when it comes to independent film, is it basically going to live online now?
I think it almost all goes online. One of the characteristics of independent film and independent documentaries is that it's more of a thoughtful dialogue piece rather than, a big screen with lots of stuff coming at you. So it lives very well on the small screen, most independent content. I do think, consumers just have chosen that as the right way to watch, small films. And, for me, those are the best films. Those are the ones that are original, really stimulate your mind and make you think, as opposed to the big blockbuster hits where you pretty much know what's going to happen next. And
Right.
to me, it's great to see those on the big screen with great sound and people jumping and screaming all around you. But, the small independent films are doing really, really well on not just Netflix, but the dozens of other niche and specialty streaming sites.
And, one of the things that this is my thing. So I feel like the movie-going experience has gone to hell because people are jerks. And this is just my take, but I feel like it's almost not worth going to the movie theater anymore because you just have to put up with so much crap where, I would go see a Marvel movie, maybe now the 5 or 6 that come out every year, but I probably will wait to see that, mid-range film, adult film that will probably come out in a couple months or now a month or so onto streaming. Do you think that's something that plays a part for other people too? Because nothing drives me crazy, Mitch. I'm such a diehard movie fan. Nothing drives me crazy than when I sit down in a movie theater and all I see is someone scrolling on their phone during the entire film. So what happened to the movie-going experience, Mitch? Why can't it be like the good old days?
I think I am 100% with you. I think the experience of going to the theater has declined dramatically over the last 30, 40 years. Some of it has to do with the introduction of lots of different food, which I like, but when you're sitting there watching a film and there's 4 or 5 people around you clanking their silverware and munching loudly, and you just it's such a distraction. Not to mention the brightly lit phone. And I think that, I hate to sound like an old fogey, but there's not the kind of the respect for other people who are watching the film, from a lot of the people who go to the movies. And so it just creates a less enjoyable experience, despite, what movie theaters have tried to do by creating, more comfortable seating and food and drinks and all those. I think you're right. The experience has declined.
Yeah, and luckily for someone like myself, there is an alternative where I don't mind waiting. I haven't gone seen the new Top Gun movie, and even though it's a bit of an outlier because Tom Cruise basically just is holding a gun to Paramount, saying, "No, you're going to release it on VOD when I say so." But most films of that ilk will come out. I mean, the Jurassic World movie is streaming on Peacock the first week of September. It just came out like 2 months ago. It's crazy, and that's sort of part of what you've been doing your whole life, disrupting the entertainment landscape with all these stops that you've had along the way. When did you realize that you sort of had that gene or that sort of trait where you're like, I want to be part of disruptive teams and companies that weren't just going to stand by the status quo?
Well, I never thought about it as disrupting. What I really enjoyed, and I really saw this in the beginning days of working at Netflix, is being surrounded by a bunch of people who all had an experience that they wanted to make better. And we all were video rental customers. I owned a chain of video stores, so I saw it firsthand from customers. But this whole idea of having to pay a late fee. I talk about this in my book, that Blockbuster, which at the time was a $5 billion a year business, was in the top 10 most hated brands. And it was all because of late fees. So, the late fee was a huge issue we all experienced. The lack of selection, always running out of the title that I wanted. Those were the things that, all of us at Netflix, felt deep inside we wanted to make better. And that really kind of expanded my mind to see how much fun and challenging it was to work on solving regular problems that we all experience.
And you bring up the thing of video stores, which to this day, I kind of miss, even though you've mentioned all the things that were such a pain in the ass about going to the rental store. I just remember stretching my neck, craning it over the counter to see if the movie I was looking for had been dropped off in the basket in the front. I kind of miss that away now, though. But do you think, and I've been pitching this to people, that I think there could be like sort of this niche world, like, you know how vinyl came back a few years ago and people now buy vinyl records now. I feel like there could be like a niche where there could be video rental stores where you go and it becomes sort of part of a community where you hang out with folks and maybe you have a cocktail and then you rent a film. Because, especially with the success of the documentary, The Last Blockbuster on the aforementioned Netflix, I think there is something about a community and film community where people can run into each other and talk about movies and stuff. Do you see there's something like that where you see like the DVD coming back or even the VHS coming back like vinyl came back?
I spent 13,000 hours working on the floor of video stores, and it was the best part of my life, talking to people about movies. We really were a general store type of environment. People would run into friends, people would talk about movies, and yes, they would look to see if the movie they wanted had just been returned. They would say, "Oh, I returned that, but it was under the seat of their car." I mean, it was really, really a great experience, not just for us who worked in it, but the customers who came in. I think, my brother kept his my old stores, which he took over, open until about 2 years ago.
Wow.
And there was still lots and lots of customers. In fact, one of his managers purchased a bunch of the inventory, including VHS, and still has a store in San Anselmo, California called Betty's Flicks.
That's awesome.
So there might be some hybrid model that could be cool where you have viewing rooms. So you have, instead of, having to face all those annoying people in a big cinema house, the video stores have this selection, and then they have a little room that maybe 4 or 5 people could sit in and quietly watch a movie. Maybe it's a hybrid model like that could work.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's, so many people, especially Gen Xers like myself, had so much nostalgia looking back, and, people, I think, were starting to post like their old Blockbuster video card. And I think there's something there, like there's some sort of like secret sauce there that someone hasn't uncovered, where there could be some place where people like us, Mitch, who miss the movie-going experience as it was, but can meet like-minded people. I think there's something there. So maybe down the line, Mitch, maybe you and I decide to invest in one of those. But but before we do that, before we get into business with each other, Mitch, let's talk about the book. And, you talk about how the Netflix monthly subscription model transformed the video business. And now, as you know, everyone and their mother has to have a subscription service. Like, no matter what it is, there's a subscription service attached to it. Mm-hmm. What is it about that? Why do you think that was such a big driver for Netflix? And why do you think that was so replicable, whatever the word is, for every other industry?
I think as selection has gotten bigger and bigger, as all the options for, watching, there's 7,000 new movies that come out worldwide every year and 50,000 new TV episodes. That idea of having to make an a la carte decision about whether this movie is worth it. In Blockbuster days, it was $4 to rent a movie. To eliminate the hassle and the kind of the stress that you have when you have to decide if something's worth it, by making it part of a subscription, so you can try this. Oh, I don't like it. Try that. No problem. I think that really resonates with consumers today who just get stressed out by having to put their money down and say, I'm going to consume this, and I may not like it. I may waste my money. So I think that's a big part of it. And then I think subscription doesn't work for everything. I think
they try
some of it. Yeah, they definitely try. I think it works where it's something you consume on a regular basis and it's commoditized. So in the case, even though you might say, well, every movie's different, the commodity is an hour of entertainment or an hour of enjoyment through watching media. And I think it works for things like movies and TV shows. It probably works for razor blades. It works for things you really know exactly what you're getting and you use all the time. There's definitely, it's definitely gone way beyond that for other services like cars and houses and things. But I think when you overcome, that kind of thing that suppresses consumption because someone has to decide, I think that's where it works. I think that's where subscription plays a role. And many people, who've grown up over the last 10 years who are used to Uber and are used to Airbnb and other, Netflix and Disney Plus, they have kind of lost that demand or that need to own. You don't see people building libraries of books anymore or libraries of movies anymore because, and like you have no pressure to go see Top Gun because you're going to be able to see it eventually wherever you want to watch it. And I think that subscription kind of eliminates your need to own things.
Yeah. And speaking of subscriptions, I'm not sure if you were part of these discussions during your time at Netflix, but famously, Netflix CEO Reed Hastings was known for not caring about people sharing their passwords with other people. Now, Fast forward to 2022, they care about it. Why were they so bold about that? Whereas most companies would be like, no, let's stop that. Why did they feel that was not such a big deal for them at the time?
There was a fascinating analysis done on people who shared passwords. And the prime driver for Netflix, everything was focused on loyalty because you want the customers who stay forever are the most profitable. They don't consume a ton. They never leave. You never have to re-recruit them. And they're incredibly profitable. So everything was built around, what content do you create that's going to keep people? What parts of the service? And when there was an analysis done on people who shared their passwords, because it was pretty obvious, those people who did it, they never quit. They never, ever quit. And, I've had a real life experience of this. I had several accounts and, employees and even, past co-founders always had to pay full price for the service, mostly because it gave us the same experience as our customers. And we were able to fine tune if we saw something not work. But I had several accounts and I thought, why do I have 3 accounts? So I canceled one. And within an hour, my son, who was away at college, called me and said, Dad, why'd you cancel that account? And I said, well, we have 3 accounts. And he says, I know, but I'm getting calls from all my friends who I shared the password with. And that's exactly what happens is that the incremental cost of providing that service to people who were sharing their passwords wasn't enough to offset the improvement in loyalty. Now, and this is the going to an AVOD service that Netflix has announced, an advertising based service, and reducing the ability to have multiple password sharing. That's all, an indication that they need to squeeze more profits out. The time of crazy growth at any cost is over. And so I think you'll see more and more of those ways to improve profit.
And you mentioned ads. Reed Hastings, again, famously for many, many years, always used to make fun of the fact that they never had to have ads. And what's it like now, 20 years after you kind of left Netflix, that all of a sudden that we will soon be seeing commercials? Does that feel weird to you as someone who was there from the beginning?
Well, there's a couple things that come to mind. Early on, we were getting offers to sell advertising in the DVD by mail days. We had huge amounts of money being thrown at us, and we even hired a sales department. We hired a woman who was the head of Egghead Software sales. And shortly into the program, one of the advertisers didn't approve the artwork fast enough, and it delayed a mailing of movies one day. And Reed basically fired the whole department and said, at that time, he said, we are only going to do those things we can do better than anyone else. And that means get the movies to people fast. And so this I think again is an indication that that growth is tightening, of course, with all the competitors. And look at Disney; they're already more than half the size of Netflix in just a couple years, less than 2 years. So I think this is part of that. And it really goes against, his mantra of only doing those things you can do better than anyone else. The first kind of one was becoming a studio.
Right.
But Ted Sarandos, who's one of the most brilliant guys in the entertainment business, made the case that Netflix could be better than any studio. And I think he's proven that. So I think that's a little bit of an exception. But I do think this move to advertising is, I don't want to, use the word desperation so much, but I think it is a clutching at new ways to make money.
And obviously they can control that, right? Because if you decide to, like what Hulu does, if you don't like ads, you pay the extra amount of money, and if you don't mind a few ads, you pay less. So I think it really just rearranges the model with Netflix, where it was usually just one size fits all shoe kind of thing, but now it changes. And do you think, in terms of Netflix, you mentioned Ted Sarandos, one thing that Netflix has done right is, television series, they have top notch, whether it's international or domestic. But they cannot solve that movie puzzle. They'll put one out, really good one out every year, but a lot of them are just kind of like run of the mill. Yep. They're very forgettable. Why do you think? And I know that the content part started after you left, but why do you think that they're able to master television but not the movie business?
I think the movie business is like a one shot at getting you into the story, whereas a series allows you to build, your passion for the characters and joy of the story. And there is so much TV that everybody, if you watched all of it, I think you might have the same opinion that there's a lot of bad TV series coming out. But there's enough where everybody's going to find something good and that they love. And that really kind of is the difference between, the mantra of Netflix and the mantra of HBO, which is HBO is only make a few but absolutely great series, whereas Netflix is make so much that everyone's going to find something good. And I think that's the case. But it's not easy. It's not easy making a series that people fall in love with. There's so many things changing in the world of entertainment, and meanwhile we have such a short attention span, and there's so many things coming and so many options. And now, while there's over 1 billion people subscribing to one streaming service or another, now there's every day there's some new niche service that might focus on what you're most interested in. So I think it's really hard.
Yeah. And, speaking of what's hard, HBO and the folks at Warner Bros. Discovery are going through a very tenuous period where they're basically just erasing shows from their platform. And, famously what they did with the Batgirl film. Is there a way to do what they're trying to do without damaging their relationship with Hollywood? Because it seems like, if you're looking at it from the business side, Wall Street's like, oh yeah, that's cool. We understand you're cutting costs. You're going to lose less money. But man, how are they going to repair that relationship with Hollywood? Because as you talk about HBO, they've been always very creator friendly, and people love working with HBO, and even Warner Bros. Pictures as well. So how are they going to remedy that? After all the dust settles with what they're doing.
Yeah, I think they're in a very sensitive position. It is the talent in Hollywood and in Bombay and all over the world is a very sensitive group that needs to be needs a relationship that's very close with the business side and a highly respected one. Finding good talent is hard everywhere in the world. And so they do run the risk of alienating even just a little bit some of the top talent. And then that kind of snowballs. So, they're not, I don't think they are going in the right direction, but ensuring that you have a solid, trusted relationship with the talent side of Hollywood is like absolutely critical, especially now.
And one thing that drives me crazy, Mitch, for many years, I worked for a Disney-owned radio station, and so I got a nice chunk of Disney stock. And the one thing that drives me crazy these days is that Wall Street only pays attention to their Disney Plus subscriber numbers. Not that they pack theme parks across the globe, that they sell a gazillion Mickey Mouse ears, just how many subscribers. And I actually had a conversation with your good friend Mark Randolph about this, and he kind of defended Wall Street's take that that's a pretty good way of looking at the value of a company. His take was that we shouldn't be looking at such short amount of times like quarters. We should be stretching those out to longer periods of time. But why do you think Wall Street is obsessed with this subscriber number? Because, we're talking, circling back to our conversation about subscriptions, it's like now that's sort of like the end all be all. It's almost like profits be damned. It's just how many subscribers you have.
Yeah, I think it's because it's an easy reference point. I think in a way it's cutting corners, making it so that you can, stack up everybody alongside each other. It's, really hard to get, some of the more underlying information like acquisition costs, ARPU, all those things. But quantity of subscribers is something you can kind of rank against all the competition, and especially the growth rates, the trends. I was like totally surprised by how wrong Wall Street got it when they started lowering their estimates of Netflix with just a very small percentage-wise number of subscriber loss. That to me just seemed like going, way over what it really demonstrated. It kind of reminds me of in the early 2000s when McDonald's for its first time in history was flat growth and slightly declining. Everybody thought, well, it's the end of McDonald's. And, so I think Wall Street does, overutilize that number. They need to look deeper.
Yeah. And you mentioned McDonald's. I know we've doing a deep dive on your time at Netflix, Redbox, and MoviePass. But, reading your book, I was like, wait, Mitch worked at McDonald's? What how does that, which of these things do not belong? How did that happen?
Yeah, that, in the early 2000s, as I was saying, McDonald's suffered their first declining year-over-year growth. This is 02, 03. And the CEO at the time put together a think tank, brought them to Bethesda, Maryland, people from the organization all over the world, and they came up with all these ideas to reinvigorate McDonald's. It's a kind of disruption from inside. And they came up with ideas like, let's create a healthy choices menu. Let's put Wi-Fi in the Golden Arches. And one of the guys, a guy, believe it or not, named Jean Doe from France, said, why don't we rent DVDs in kiosks and people will have to return the movies. They'll smell the burgers and fries and we'll create an incremental transaction. And so they came to us at Netflix because they realized, we don't know anything about the movie rental business, but Netflix does. So they came to us, and I thought it was, they basically wanted us at Netflix to run their DVD rental business. What they didn't know is Mark Randolph and I had just started a kind of a stealth project called Netflix Express, which was building kiosks and putting them in grocery stores that would get the inventory closer to you when you went shopping. So instead of waiting 3 days in the mail, you could go to the kiosk, exchange your movies, and get another one right there. And so I brought it to the rest of the team at Netflix, and everybody at Netflix was pretty much what you'd call a McDonald's avoiders. They wouldn't touch the food with a 10-foot pole. So they said, no, we don't want to be associated with McDonald's. Well, when I left about 9 months later, which I talk about, that whole, process in the book, Reed had asked me to stay as a consultant and go to Europe and go to Japan to look at expansion of Netflix movie by mail in those countries. And when I came back, I remembered these guys at McDonald's. So I went to go meet them and fell in love with the team and the idea. So they asked me to come on as COO when they had 6 kiosks built all over the world and build that into a business. So for 8 years, I was the COO, and 5 years after I started, also president, and grew that to $1.5 billion a year in revenue by 2011.
Wow. And I'm trying to remember, they did away with those, right? Those kiosks at McDonald's?
No, we ended up, a couple of us tried to do a leverage buyout and failed. And a company called Coinstar, those coin counting machines, acquired the business in 2009. And so made a Redbox a division within their public company. Redbox was 2 and 3 times larger than the coin part of the business. And my CFO, my former CFO, took over as president and CEO of the company. Then Apollo acquired them from Coinstar. And then a little while ago, a year or so ago, I think they went public. And then they just got acquired by a company with an amazing name. It's called Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I've heard that. They started a media company, right?
Yeah. So they've been cobbling together some pieces, popcorn flicks and a few scary movie channels. And Redbox still does almost $300 million a year in revenue.
Absolutely.
Believe it or not. So anyway, the business is still going, much smaller than, I think at the very height, which was a year after I left, they got to $2 billion in annual revenue. Yeah, it was an amazing business, just a great experience, wonderful team of people solving problems every day. Here's a Netflix Redbox correlation. In 2010, 3 of the 6 major studios decided not to sell Netflix or Redbox the hit new releases on street date. They wanted Blockbuster and Walmart to be exclusive. And so I had a field team of about 500 employees in the field. And in order to get around it, I gave them all credit cards. And they went out every Tuesday and bought every copy from Walmart and Target and Best Buy of all those movies. And it's a great story. It's in my book. It's essentially, how do you fight the man?
I love that. That's great. And, we started the conversation talking about MoviePass. And I know your time at MoviePass didn't end the way you wanted it to. That was a rough time, I'm sure. We all try to learn from our mistakes and failures. When you walked away and the smoke cleared, what was the big takeaway that transformed you, Mitch? That you're like, how sometimes when we do that one thing, we're like, I'm never gonna do that thing again. What was that? Yeah. What was your takeaway from your time there?
There was a couple things. One of them is I lost, and in fact, I call one of the chapters about MoviePass is how I forgot everything I ever learned.
Yeah.
And I was distracted. I was putting out fires every day and not stepping back and looking at the bigger picture. And I think whether things are going well or going bad, that's something I've learned, to remind myself never to repeat, never to get so focused on solving, little problems that I forget the big problem. The other thing, tactical things is that, I really should have listened and sought advice more often from other people. I got so kind of, built into this like small room with a small group of people that I didn't get it. I didn't get a lot of good advice, which I really, I think back and go, God, had I only asked for advice or even listened to the people trying to give me advice. So, big lessons. There's a lot of other smaller ones, but those are the two, that stand out. And ideally, I'd never make that mistake again.
I can't even imagine what that would be like, because how the old Ferris Bueller meme, life moves fast. You never know, whatever it is. That's like MoviePass in a nutshell. Everything was going so quickly. It was like you had this, you guys came out like fire, and then all of a sudden the numbers dip, and then you start messing around with the cost, and then all of a sudden all hell breaks loose. So I can't even imagine like that, like 2 or 3 year period there must have been just bananas for you guys.
Yeah. And, that's the thing. You would think it was 2 or 3 years. It was 9 months.
9 months, right.
Yeah, we went from 20,000 subscribers to 3.1 or 3.2 million subscribers in like 8 months. And, number one, weren't prepared, for that growth. And so every day it was like putting Band-Aids on the system to be able to work. It was way too fast. And I always remember, the co-founder who's now taken over the company and relaunching it. He would always tell me, you got to create a waiting list. Don't accept. Remember, we talked a little bit earlier about growth at any cost.
Yeah,
that was the path I was taking. What he kept recommending is slow down. You don't have to accept everybody as a customer. And, had I followed that advice amongst many others, at least we wouldn't have had so many problems.
Yeah. And, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, Mitch. And at the end of the book, you write, never stop tinkering. You never know what you might discover. What's that mean for you, Mitch, going forward? It sounds like you're going to keep tinkering.
Yeah, I'm super fascinated by, both the entertainment world, how people pick movies and TV shows, especially the technology behind helping market content. That to me is fascinating. And what I love about it really is tinkering. It's turning dials right and left. What's the right thing to say to me to get me to want to see Top Gun versus to say to you?
Right.
And how do you automate that kind of technology? And so, I'm continuing to advise, people in the entertainment business. I've produced a couple of documentaries, one which is premiering at the Venice Film Festival next week. I get really excited about people who are trying to solve regular problems.
And do you think, lastly, you're part of such amazing brands, will we ever see anything like this again? Will we see another Netflix? Will we see another Redbox? Will we see another MoviePass? I don't, even though they're just trying now. But these are such huge companies. Do you see any of these repeatable, like where it could happen again?
I don't think so for me, but I definitely believe that 5 years from now, we're going to look back and go, holy cow, I never thought that would be such a big business. I think that when you look around how, our lives are, whether it's, in our daily lives or our work life, there are lots of things that don't work well. There's a lot of things that could be improved that, could be things that could work in any part of the world or all of the world. So I'm very, very bullish on founders who are solving those kinds of problems, and absolutely believe there will be more Netflixes, there'll be, more Ubers, there'll be plenty of things we hadn't even occurred to us.
Well, you've come a long way since putting Be Kind Rewind stickers on boxes, Mitch. So congratulations on that. Congratulations on the book. It's Watch and Learn How I Turned Hollywood Upside Down with Netflix, Redbox, and MoviePass. His name is Mitch Lowe. Mitch, thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that'll do it for this episode of the Forbes Books Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you take a second to subscribe so you automatically get new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I'd love if you left us a review so more amazing entrepreneurs like yourself can discover the show. And please, don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.